You are sitting where you always sit. The floor beneath your feet, the walls around you, the chair that supports your weight, all seem solid, reliable, certain. You trust your senses, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the faint hum of electricity in your room. Everything feels tangible, everything feels real. Yet the very ground beneath you, the air around you, even the atoms that make up your body, are mostly empty space. Almost everything you perceive as solid is a structure of voids held together by forces you cannot see. You believe that matter is stable, that the world is a collection of things, but physics suggests that this apparent solidity is an illusion. Most of reality is invisible, pervasive, and far stranger than your mind can comfortably grasp. In the next journey, that you will confront what it means for the majority of existence to elude perception, to exist without form, to shape everything you touch, see, and know, and to do so silently, everywhere. The question is simple but devastating. If reality is mostly invisible, what does that say about the world you think you understand? The void between atoms. You imagine atoms as tiny spheres, each compact and complete, yet if you could zoom into one, you would see that nearly all of it is empty space, a void so vast that the solid nucleus occupies less than 1/10,000th of the atom's volume. The spaces between protons, neutrons, and electrons are not negligible. They define the distances between everything you perceive as real. The air you breathe, the chair you sit on, the skin of your fingers pressed against the surface, all of these are composed of atoms that are mostly emptiness. The solidity you trust, the weight, the texture, is not a property of matter itself. It is the product of forces acting across invisible distances, pushing and pulling at subatomic scales. Imagine for a moment that the nucleus of an atom were the size of a marble. The electrons orbiting it would be as far away as a stadium surrounding that marble. The rest of the atom, 99.9999% of it, would be empty space, a void filled with potential rather than substance. And yet, when countless atoms align, they form structures that seem rigid and unyielding. Your perception of solidity is a mirage, an emergent phenomenon arising from interactions across immense emptiness. What feels continuous is actually a lattice of absence stitched together by invisible forces. This emptiness is not nothing. The space between atomic components is populated by electromagnetic fields, fluctuating probabilities, and the invisible choreography of quantum mechanics. Electrons never collide with nuclei, not because there is a physical barrier, but because their wave-like nature and the Pauli exclusion principle prevent them from occupying the same state. Each touch you experience is the result of repulsion between electron clouds, a gentle push at distances millions of times smaller than a millimeter. What you call contact is the resonance of forces transmitted through void. Consider the implications. If matter is mostly empty, then the tangible world you trust is a delicate illusion. Every solid surface, every object, there is held together not by material substance, but by the structure of emptiness and the precise balance of forces. Remove those interactions, and the familiar world would collapse. The solidity of your environment, the coherence of your body, and the permanence of objects are all contingent, ephemeral, reliant on interactions you cannot see. The stuff of reality is defined less by what is present than by what is absent. This perspective also reframes your relationship with space itself. The void between atoms is as real as the particles themselves, a landscape of possibility and fluctuation. Quantum mechanics tells us that this emptiness is alive with activity. Virtual particles constantly blink into existence and vanish, and fields fluctuate even in nothing. The spaces you take for granted are teeming with invisible events, forming the foundation upon which the visible world rests. To exist within matter is to exist largely within emptiness, experiencing only the effects of what fills it. Philosophically, this realization is unsettling. You assume that the world is composed of objects, solid and persistent, yet the true fabric of reality is predominantly absence. The ground beneath your feet, the cup in your hand, even your own flesh is mostly a vacuum. The apparent stability of the world is not an intrinsic property, but a consequence of invisible interactions. Matter is a stage built upon void. The play of reality is enacted across a vast emptiness that you cannot perceive. As you confront this, you begin to understand the strangeness of existence itself. What you consider real, weight, texture, resistance, is a dialogue of forces across empty space. What you think of as tangible is ephemeral at its core. The universe is less a collection of solid things than a web of relationships suspended across nothing. Every sensation, every perception is the translation of empty space into experience, a mapping of absence onto consciousness. And yet, despite this void, the universe is coherent, enduring, and structured. The emptiness between atoms is not chaos. It is ordered, governed by laws, precise and predictable. Reality achieves stability not through substance, but through the careful orchestration of absence, the meticulous interplay of void. In a sense, emptiness is the true scaffolding of the universe, the invisible architecture upon which all existence hangs. To see matter clearly is to see nothingness, and to understand reality is to confront the spaces that make it possible, the forces that fill nothing. Even the emptiness between atoms is not truly empty. Fields ripple invisibly, exchanging forces faster than you can observe. The electromagnetic force binds matter, the strong force holds nuclei together, and gravity weaves the cosmic web, all acting through space you cannot see, through emptiness you cannot touch, yet forming the reality you assume to be solid. What feels like tangible matter is nothing more than the intersection of these unseen influences, an ephemeral network of energy and interaction projected onto the illusion of substance. The world you experience as real is in fact the result of forces acting across spaces you cannot perceive. Consider the electromagnetic force. It governs the behavior of electrons, binding them to nuclei and dictating the arrangement of atoms. Then the push and pull you feel when touching an object is primarily this force, manifesting as resistance between electron clouds. There is no contact in the way you imagine. Your hand does not physically meet the surface of a table. It encounters the electromagnetic field radiating from its atoms. What you interpret as touch is the sensation of force transmitted across empty space, mediated by interactions that are invisible yet precise. The solidity of your environment depends entirely on fields, not matter. Deeper still, within the nucleus, the strong force operates at distances smaller than an atom itself. It overcomes the natural repulsion between positively charged protons, holding the core of matter together. Without it, the atoms forming your body, your chair, even the ground beneath you, would disintegrate. This force acts across a distance that is imperceptible, invisible, yet unimaginably powerful. The stuff you perceive as dense and permanent is in fact maintained by an intricate balance of invisible pressures and pulls. The emptiness of space becomes, paradoxically, the medium through which stability emerges. Gravity, in contrast, operates over cosmic distances, shaping galaxies, stars, and planets. You feel it as weight, a subtle pull, but its reach extends across the vast void between celestial bodies. Though imperceptible at the scale of atoms, gravity is woven into the very structure of the universe, bending space-time itself. It is another example of the unseen, sculpting the visible. The cosmos you inhabit is the product of these overlapping fields, each invisible on its own, yet collectively dictating the motion and persistence of everything you encounter. Quantum mechanics complicates this picture further. Forces are not transmitted as continuous flows, but as discrete exchanges, as particles called bosons that appear and vanish, mediating interactions at the smallest scales. Even in the vacuum between atoms, these interactions occur constantly. The empty space you assume to be inert is actually a stage for a ceaseless dialogue of force carriers, invisible particles that govern stability, cohesion, and motion. Nothing in your room is as still as it seems. The void is alive with influence. The implications are profound. Reality is not composed simply of matter. It is a symphony of interactions, fields, and energies that you cannot see. Every sensation, every contact, every structure arises from these hidden forces. When you sit in a chair, it does not support you because of its substance alone, but because of the complex interplay of electromagnetic repulsion, quantum constraints, and gravitational pull acting across empty space. Emptiness itself becomes the medium of existence, a dynamic stage upon which stability is performed. Philosophically, this reshapes your understanding of the world. Solidity is not an intrinsic property. Permanence is not guaranteed. What you trust as reality is constructed from invisible activity, from fields that permeate space you cannot perceive. You live surrounded by interactions you cannot observe directly, forces that operate across vast ranges, from subatomic to cosmic, yet determine every aspect of your experience. The tangible is a projection of the intangible, the visible consequence of invisible choreography. To exist is to be suspended in these unseen influences, to be continuously shaped by energies that defy perception. Forces are not auxiliary to reality. They are reality itself, encoded in the empty spaces between and within atoms, running through the body, the room, and the cosmos. Every object, every sensation, every motion is a testament to their presence. And yet, you never see them, you never touch them, you rarely even consider them. Most of what makes the universe real is invisible, omnipresent, and utterly essential. The solidity of existence is the product of nothingness, made active, the void filled with forces beyond perception, shaping all that you call real. The quantum sea, beneath every particle, beneath every atom, there is a restless quantum field. The particles flicker into existence and vanish without warning, a churning sea of probabilities. Your body, your desk, your room, all are temporary arrangements on this restless foundation, precarious yet persistent. What you experience as permanence is only the illusion of stability imposed by the aggregate behavior of countless quantum fluctuations. The world is a surface, atop a turbulent, invisible ocean, and the solidity you trust is a momentary calm in a storm that never ceases. Consider the behavior of electrons. They do not trace definite paths around the nucleus, as classical physics might suggest. Instead, they exist as clouds of probability, smeared across space, their position indeterminate until measured. Even in the molecules that compose your body, uncertainty is fundamental. Every bond, every interaction, every molecular shape emerges from a statistical interplay in this invisible sea. The form you see, the shape of your hand, the contour of your desk, is only the manifestation of countless fleeting events resolved collectively into temporary coherence. This probabilistic foundation extends beyond electrons. Virtual particles emerge from the quantum vacuum, appearing and disappearing in fractions of a second. They exist not as permanent entities, but as transient disturbances in fields. Yet their effects are tangible. They influence forces, shift energy levels, and even contribute to the mass of particles themselves. The empty spaces you assume are inert are, in fact, alive with imperceptible activity, a perpetual flux that underlies all matter and energy. The quiet, empty void is a storm of creation and annihilation, the restless heartbeat of the universe. The scale of these fluctuations is immense. They occur at distances far smaller than atoms and times far shorter than the blink of an eye. You are unaware of them because your senses and instruments are too coarse, too slow to capture the constant flickering, and yet they shape everything you can perceive. Each object, each sensation, each interaction is filtered through this quantum sea. Reality, as you understand it, is a filtered projection of innumerable microscopic events you cannot witness. What feels continuous is stitched together from the impermanent and the transient. The implications are unsettling. You inhabit a world where permanence is provisional, where stability is contingent upon the statistical outcomes of countless invisible events. Your sense of self, the solidity of your body, even the stability of the ground beneath your feet, all depend upon patterns emerging from a turbulent, unseen foundation. The notion that matter is fixed or enduring becomes untenable. Reality is less a collection of things and more a fleeting convergence of possibilities. The world persists because probabilities converge, not because objects are inherently stable. This turbulent substrate also connects every particle across space in subtle ways. Quantum fields pervade the universe, linking distant points with the same underlying potential. Local events ripple across the invisible medium, influencing probabilities elsewhere. The apparent separateness of objects and locations is a superficial property of perception. At the quantum level, reality is a web of interdependent potentialities, an intricate lattice of what could be, constantly shaping what is observed. You are immersed in this sea, carried upon waves you cannot perceive, guided by currents you cannot measure. Even time itself is defined by these fluctuations. The progression of events, the flow you experience as past, present, and future, is built upon the underlying activity of quantum fields. Without their restless motion, the world could not manifest its structure, motion could not occur, and causality, as you know it, would fail. The unobservable dance of particles, the ephemeral emergence of virtual entities, forms the invisible scaffold on which existence depends. To live in this universe, is to dwell atop an ocean that never rests. Stability is an emergent property, coherence a temporary alignment within a seething probabilistic medium. The comfort you derive from apparent permanence is fragile, a perceptual overlay on a reality that is inherently unstable, unpredictable, and alive with unseen events. Your surroundings are not built of solid, fixed matter. They are waves in a quantum sea, patterns arising from a restless field, fleeting yet persistent enough to be perceived as real. Light's hidden weight. You see light as brightness, a guide for your eyes. But photons, massless as they may seem, carry momentum. They exert pressure, influence trajectories, and interact with matter. Light, though intangible, presses upon reality, proving that even what you cannot grasp physically can exert force. The sunlight streaming through a window is not merely illumination. It is a continuous exchange of energy and momentum, particles moving relentlessly, shaping matter invisibly. Every ray is a stream of photons, each one transferring an infinitesimal push to whatever it strikes, subtly rearranging the world without your perception. Consider the effect of light on objects in space. Solar sails, thin reflective membranes, can be propelled across the vacuum of the cosmos by nothing but sunlight. There is no air, no tangible medium, only the invisible momentum of photons colliding with the surface. Here, light's pressure is a force of motion, proof that even the most ephemeral entities can shape reality. The photon is weightless in mass, yet it carries influence, an invisible hand moving matter across distances you cannot traverse or even perceive directly. The implications ripple downward. If massless light can exert pressure on cosmic scales, then at your own scale, countless imperceptible forces are constantly at work, guiding and constraining the apparent solidity of your environment. Even closer to home, photons interact with matter in ways that are not immediately obvious. They can excite electrons, altering energy levels in atoms and molecules. They enable photosynthesis, triggering life itself. They generate heat when absorbed, subtly influencing the behavior of air, liquids, and solids. Every interaction is a transfer of energy, a force exerted across distance without contact, evidence that the invisible can be tangible in consequence. Light does not merely illuminate, it sculpts, presses, nudges, and guides the behavior of the world, all without leaving a trace that your senses can directly perceive. The paradox is clear. What seems intangible can produce the same effects as what seems solid. Momentum does not require mass in the traditional sense. Influence does not require substance. Your perception of reality privileges touch and weight, yet the universe operates according to rules that are invisible, subtle, and non-intuitive. Light carries both information and force, and your world, the table you rest your hands on, the air you breathe, even your own body, is continuously under its gentle, unrelenting pressure. The familiar distinction between the material and the immaterial collapses under scrutiny. This understanding also reshapes your perception of causality. Photons travel immense distances, bridging stars and planets, delivering energy that governs climates, weather patterns, and even the evolution of life. The invisible hand of light orchestrates events across scales that your senses cannot comprehend. That the apparent stability of the environment is not merely a product of mass and gravity. but also of these constant, unseen exchanges of momentum. The sun's photons reach you without effort, yet they subtly shape every molecule they touch. The universe is far more interconnected and force-laden than appearances suggest. Even at the quantum level, light behaves in ways that defy intuition. It can act as both particle and wave, existing simultaneously as discrete photons and as oscillating fields. The very act of interacting with light alters the system it touches, a reminder that perception is never separate from influence. Every beam you encounter is a dynamic agent, a force in motion, an imperceptible weight pressing upon the fabric of reality. The boundary between empty space and matter is porous, influenced by entities that are neither solid nor tangible, yet exert real, measurable effects. To sit in a room bathed in sunlight is to exist in a field of invisible forces. Each photon strikes atoms, nudging electrons, transferring momentum, and pushing matter ever so slightly. You inhabit a world under constant influence from a source you take for granted, an active, unseen pressure that shapes the stability, motion, and energy of everything around you. Light is weight without mass, presence without form, proof that reality is structured not only by matter, but by the invisible streams of influence that pass through, around, and within it. Dark matter's dominion. Astronomers calculate the mass of galaxies and discover a startling discrepancy. Visible matter accounts for less than 1/6 of the total. The rest is dark matter, unseen, yet pervasive, shaping the cosmos silently. The universe is mostly composed of something that does not reflect, absorb, or emit light, something that exists everywhere but cannot be directly observed. You might think of galaxies as islands of stars, glowing and tangible, but they are actually floating in a vast, invisible ocean. The stars, the nebulae, the gas you can see are only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath and around them stretches a scaffold of matter you cannot detect with your eyes, a hidden skeleton supporting the universe itself. This invisible mass exerts gravitational influence on everything that is visible. Stars orbit galactic centers at speeds too high to be held by the gravity of observable matter alone. Galaxies cluster and move in ways that defy the predictions of Newtonian mechanics, if only ordinary matter is considered. The unseen weight of dark matter is what holds these structures together, preventing them from tearing themselves apart. The cosmos you imagine as composed of glowing matter is actually dominated by something fundamentally invisible, a silent architect whose presence is inferred only through motion and force. Dark matter is everywhere. It permeates your own galaxy, threading through the space between stars, enveloping planets, even flowing through your body. Billions of dark matter particles pass through you every second without interaction, leaving no trace, no sensation, no signal, except the subtle influence they have on the gravitational landscape. You are constantly immersed in this hidden substance, and yet it remains beyond detection, beyond perception. Most of what shapes your environment is invisible, and your intuition about what exists is profoundly incomplete. Its pervasiveness is matched by its subtlety. Dark matter does not emit light, nor does it absorb it. It does not interact with atoms in any conventional way, making it impossible to isolate in a laboratory or feel in any tactile sense. The universe is structured not primarily by the matter you can see, but by this unseen, ungraspable form of existence. It dominates cosmic architecture, orchestrating the movement of galaxies, influencing the distribution of clusters, and governing the expansion of the universe in ways only detectable through indirect observation. The cosmos is largely a landscape molded by the invisible. The implications extend to your understanding of reality itself. What you perceive, the glowing and tangible universe around you, this is a small fraction of what truly exists. If you trust your senses to grasp reality, you are missing the majority of matter and influence that shapes it. The universe is less a collection of objects than a complex interplay of visible and invisible, tangible and intangible, seen and unseen. Your perception is a fragile map, projected onto a vast territory you cannot traverse, a fraction of existence made legible, while the majority remains hidden. The dominance of dark matter also reframes the nature of emptiness. Space is not simply vacuum, it is infused with an unseen mass, a pervasive presence that exerts force, constrains motion, and structures reality. The void between stars is not empty. It is suffused with an invisible material that dominates the gravitational interactions of galaxies. What feels like emptiness is in fact a medium filled with weight, force, and influence, silently dictating the behavior of the cosmos on scales beyond human comprehension. Philosophically, this challenges the way you understand existence. You assume reality is composed of what you can see, touch, and measure. Yet the majority of matter is fundamentally inaccessible to your senses. Your universe, your immediate environment, your understanding of physical law, each is constructed atop a hidden substrate. To inhabit the cosmos is to live within a realm where the visible is exceptional and the invisible is universal. What you perceive as the universe is only a thin veneer upon a vast, silent, and all-encompassing dominion of darkness. Even your own sense of scale is deceptive. The mass that governs the universe's structure, that holds galaxies together, that influences the motion of everything you can observe, is mostly invisible. The majority of reality does not shine, does not weigh in conventional ways, and cannot be interacted with through ordinary means. You exist in a universe where the fundamental architecture is unseen, where the majority of matter is a ghostly presence, pervasive yet imperceptible. The cosmos is not what you see, it is what you cannot, and perhaps will never see. The ghost particles, neutrinos stream through your body by the trillions every second, passing effortlessly through flesh, bone, and steel. You do not feel them. You cannot see them. Yet their existence is fundamental, hinting at the vast, invisible currents of energy that surround and penetrate you, unnoticed. Every second, these particles, born in the heart of the sun, in exploding stars, in cosmic rays, and in the radioactive decay of elements on Earth, traverse your body as if you were not there. You exist in a river of ghostly entities, flowing through you without leaving a trace, yet shaping the universe in ways your senses cannot detect. Neutrinos are unique in their indifference to ordinary matter. They interact so weakly that for all practical purposes, they do not collide with the atoms composing your body or the room around you. Your molecules are almost entirely transparent to them, yet their trajectories and presence can be inferred through sophisticated instruments, buried deep underground or encased in ice, capturing only a fraction of the countless particles that pass undisturbed. The universe is full of matter you cannot perceive, and the majority of energy is invisible. They're flowing through and around you as if you were a phantom yourself. Their abundance is staggering. Every second, billions of neutrinos pass through every square centimeter of space, every inch of your body. They are relics of nuclear processes, messengers from the sun, the cosmos, and the depths of dying stars. And yet, for all their numbers, their presence is imperceptible. The currents of energy they carry are not zero, but their interaction with matter is so subtle that existence itself feels unaffected. Reality, as you experience it, is built atop a substrate of imperceptible flows, forces, and particles that leave no imprint on your senses. Neutrinos reveal the universe as fundamentally permeated by hidden streams of energy. Every star, every supernova, every cosmic phenomenon broadcasts these ghost particles, embedding invisible signals throughout space. They are cosmic whispers, unnoticed by ordinary perception, yet integral to the unfolding of matter and energy. You inhabit a universe where the majority of fundamental processes occur without sensory detection, where the invisible is not secondary but dominant, silently guiding evolution, motion, and interaction. Philosophically, this undermines the assumptions you hold about presence and substance. You feel the solidity of objects, the pressure of your weight, the heat of sunlight, and yet the universe teems with entities that are neither visible nor tangible, yet real in their effects and in their abundance. The world you inhabit is only a thin layer of perceivable phenomena, floating atop a vast ocean of invisible currents. Your perception captures only a fraction of reality. The rest flows freely through and around you, unrecognized, unstoppable, unobserved. Even when you attempt to measure or manipulate the world, neutrinos remind you of its elusiveness. They pass through the densest shielding, the thickest walls, untouched by the instruments you trust. They challenge the notion of boundaries, suggesting that matter, while seemingly solid, is penetrable at a fundamental level. The structures you inhabit, the objects you touch, the air you breathe, all coexist with a hidden torrent that flows regardless of their presence. Solidity is superficial, and impenetrability is relative. These ghost particles also hint at the scale of the invisible universe. Neutrinos are just one type of particle among many in a vast zoo of entities that rarely interact with ordinary matter. Most of the cosmos, most of the currents of energy, most of the processes that shape stars, galaxies, and planets are occurring in domains you cannot detect with unaided senses. You are immersed in a medium of subtle forces, unseen particles, and ghostly streams that define the structure and behavior of the universe. To exist in this context is to be continuously permeated by imperceptible reality. Every second, you are traversed by currents that do not touch you, yet define the architecture of the cosmos. The ghost particles are reminders that the familiar world, the furniture, the air, your own body, is only part of what exists. The majority of reality is invisible, pervasive, and indifferent to your perception, flowing through and around you, a silent, endless presence that you cannot evade, cannot feel, and cannot see. The quantum entanglement. Two particles separated by galaxies can instantaneously influence each other. Distance, as you understand it, dissolves in the strange logic of quantum mechanics. The universe is connected in ways that defy common sense, suggesting that invisibility is not absence, but a different form of presence. You might imagine two electrons entangled across billions of light years. Change the state of one, and the other responds immediately, as if the vast emptiness between them were irrelevant. The void, the space, the distance you trust as a boundary, none of it constrains the interaction. Reality, at its deepest level, is woven from invisible threads that link all matter in subtle, instantaneous ways. This phenomenon challenges the most basic assumptions about locality and separateness. You live your life believing that objects are independent, that actions have consequences only nearby, and that influence diminishes with distance. Entanglement suggests otherwise. The universe is a network of correlations, hidden and silent, that defy classical intuition. The world you perceive as composed of distinct entities is actually interconnected, part of a seamless, invisible web. Presence does not require substance, and separation does not prevent influence. The unseen connections matter more than the visible gaps. Entanglement is not just a theoretical curiosity. Experiments repeatedly confirm that particles retain these correlations even when separated by vast distances. Photons, electrons, and even small molecules can exist in entangled states, their properties linked regardless of spatial separation. Measurement of one immediately determines the state of the other, without any observable signal traveling between them. Causality, as you understand it, seems suspended. The connection transcends space, defying your intuition that interactions require a medium or proximity. In the silent logic of quantum mechanics, the invisible is active, shaping reality in ways your senses cannot detect. The implications extend beyond physics into your understanding of reality itself. If entanglement is pervasive, then invisibility does not imply absence. It can signify a form of presence that operates outside perception. Two distant particles, two distant objects, may be bound by correlations you cannot see, forces that you cannot touch, yet effects that ripple across space in ways you will never directly observe. The universe is not a collection of isolated objects. It is a pattern of hidden relationships, woven through empty space by laws that are invisible but persistent. Even more unsettling is the idea that this interconnectedness is not rare. Every particle you perceive may be entangled with countless others across the cosmos. Your body, your environment, even the air around you participates in correlations that span unimaginable distances. The invisible relationships extend beyond what you can measure, beyond what you can even conceptualize. Reality is not discrete. It is a continuous network of potential influence, a hidden architecture binding matter across the void. Invisibility becomes a dimension of existence rather than a lack of being. Quantum entanglement also destabilizes the notion of objectivity. Observation is no longer neutral. When you measure a particle, you do not simply reveal a pre-existing state. You define it, and through entanglement, you instantaneously define the states of distant particles. Your acts of observation are not isolated. They ripple outward, interacting with systems far beyond your immediate perception. The invisible connections you cannot see are constantly responding, shaping outcomes, and determining the behavior of matter across distances you cannot comprehend. Philosophically, this reveals the universe as fundamentally relational. Objects are not self-contained. Their identities depend upon invisible bonds, entangled histories, and unseen interactions. The solid world you inhabit is only one layer of a deeper, interconnected reality, a vast web of potential and influence. Distance is an illusion, isolation is a mirage, and invisibility is merely a form of subtle, pervasive presence. Reality is far stranger than your senses suggest. It is a network of relationships that are both unseen and indispensable, stretching from the smallest particle to the farthest galaxy, silently knitting the cosmos together. The vacuum's energy. Empty space is not empty at all. It seethes with energy, a potential that can create particles spontaneously. The vacuum is a canvas of possibility, unstable and dynamic, forming the undercurrent of all existence, even as you sit, convinced that nothingness is nothing. The quiet void around you, the seemingly barren space between atoms, is in fact a roiling medium of potentiality, a restless foundation from which matter and energy emerge. What you call emptiness is a stage alive with activity, invisible currents that ripple incessantly through every corner of the universe, including the space within your own body. At the quantum level, the vacuum is never still. Fields fluctuate spontaneously, giving rise to transient particles that appear, exist briefly, and vanish without warning. These virtual particles are ephemeral, yet their presence has measurable consequences. The Casimir effect, for example, reveals that two closely spaced metal plates in a vacuum experience a tiny force generated entirely by these invisible fluctuations. What you assume to be nothing is not passive. It is a restless, dynamic medium, constantly shaping reality in subtle but real ways. The void is not absence. It is a crucible of possibility. Even more striking, the energy inherent in the vacuum may have cosmic consequences. Theoretical physics suggests that vacuum energy could influence the expansion of the universe, driving acceleration in ways that ordinary matter cannot explain. The empty spaces between galaxies, the vast cosmic voids, may be filled with this invisible, potent energy, silently dictating the large-scale structure of the cosmos. What you perceive as vast emptiness is instead a sea of latent influence, a force so pervasive that it governs the behavior of the universe itself, while remaining undetectable to your senses. The vacuum's energy also interacts with matter in profound ways. Particles gain mass, forces propagate, and quantum phenomena manifest because of the underlying fluctuations of the vacuum. Even in the atoms that compose your body, the space between electrons and nuclei is suffused with this restless activity. Your existence, unstable and coherent at human scales, depends upon a substrate of ceaseless fluctuation. The solidity of the world, the persistence of structures, the very stability you take for granted, all arise from this invisible, dynamic energy. Philosophically, this challenges the very notion of nothingness. You might assume that a vacuum is the absence of reality, a place devoid of influence or presence. Instead, the vacuum is foundational, primary, and active. It is the medium from which matter emerges, through which forces propagate, and in which the universe itself unfolds. The apparent emptiness around you is not a void to be ignored. It is the matrix upon which existence is constructed, a hidden current that gives rise to every observable phenomenon. Even your perception of time is tied to this energy. The fluctuations of the vacuum are continuous, imperceptible, yet they define the potential for events to occur, for causality to unfold, for interactions to take place. Without the vacuum's dynamic energy, particles could not form, forces could not operate, and the universe would remain inert. Reality is contingent upon these invisible ripples, the restless activity of what you thought was nothing, orchestrating the dance of matter and energy beneath the surface of perception. To exist in this universe is to inhabit a world that is largely invisible and active. Every moment, you are surrounded by energy that cannot be seen, cannot be touched, and yet is essential for your very coherence. The vacuum is alive, a sea of fluctuating potential that forms the bedrock of everything you encounter. The spaces you assume to be empty are suffused with force, possibility, and influence. Nothingness is never silent, never still. It is a restless canvas, shaping reality even as you remain unaware, sitting within the living fabric of the invisible. The illusion of solidity. Every object you touch is a mesh of electron clouds, their repulsion preventing matter from collapsing. Your fingers do not meet a wall. They meet resistance from forces at subatomic scales. Solidity is an agreement of fields, not a property of matter itself. The atoms that compose your hand, the desk beneath it, the wall in front of you, are almost entirely empty space. The contact you feel is not an encounter between substances. It is a negotiation of invisible forces, a delicate dance of electromagnetic interactions that manifest as resistance, texture, and shape. What you perceive as solid is actually a phenomenon arising from interactions in the void. Imagine the electrons within your hand and the electrons within the wall. As your fingers approach, the negative charges of these electrons repel each other. At no point do the particles touch. Instead, they enforce distance, creating the sensation of solidity. Every sensation of weight, pressure, or hardness is the macroscopic effect of countless subatomic interactions, happening invisibly, instantaneously, and continuously. The wall is not a barrier made of substance. It is an effect, an emergent property of the repulsion between invisible clouds of charge. This perspective challenges everything you believe about matter. You assume that objects are inherently substantial, that solidity is a trait intrinsic to what exists. In reality, matter is more like a stage set, held together by rules and interactions rather than intrinsic density. Your desk remains rigid. Your chair supports you only because the forces between electrons collectively prevent collapse. Remove those interactions, even in theory, and the solid world would dissolve into a shapeless, indistinct haze. The permanence and stability you trust are illusions maintained by invisible dynamics. The consequences extend to your perception of your own body. Flesh, bone, and muscle are also composed of atoms with vast emptiness between them. Your skin does not block or hold anything intrinsically. It only appears solid because of the same electromagnetic rules. The sensation of your own body pressing against a chair or against air is mediated by these forces. You exist not as a continuous substance, but as a temporary lattice of electron clouds interacting with other lattices, momentary coherence suspended atop a sea of emptiness and invisible energy. This also reframes the meaning of touch and interaction. What you interpret as a firm handshake, the pressure of a foot on the ground, or the resistance of a doorknob, is in fact the result of forces transmitted through space you cannot see. The universe is less composed of tangible blocks and more of fields exerting influence. Solidity is consensus, a large-scale effect of countless micro-interactions, not a guarantee of matter's permanence or certainty. It is a fragile, emergent property of the invisible. Even at the scale of construction or engineering, this principle holds. Buildings, bridges, then vehicles appear solid because the electromagnetic and nuclear forces within their constituent atoms operate predictably. The strength of steel or wood is not simply a matter of substance, but of the orchestration of subatomic forces acting across vast, mostly empty space. The universe constructs stability not from substance itself, but from interaction, enforcing limits and patterns upon the invisible void within everything. Philosophically, this realization is unsettling. The world is not inherently tangible. Your assumptions about matter, contact, and presence are built on an emergent illusion. You inhabit a universe where touch, weight, and resistance are consequences of invisible negotiations, and where emptiness defines existence as much as substance does. Solidity is not absolute. It is temporary, contingent, and fragile. The walls you lean against, the floor you stand upon, your own body, they are all projections of forces, ghostly scaffolds arising from void, convincing you that reality is firm while it is, at its core, mostly empty. Invisible waves of force. Gravitational waves ripple through space, passing silently through stars, planets, and you. Only instruments detect them, yet they carry energy and information across cosmic distances. Reality is full of motions you cannot perceive, shaping the universe imperceptibly. These waves are distortions in the very fabric of space-time, stretching and compressing the distances between points without any visible sign. Every moment, countless waves traverse the cosmos, passing through everything, including your own body, leaving no trace you can sense, yet carrying with them the history of cataclysmic events billions of light years away. Consider the origin of these waves. When massive bodies such as black holes collide, or neutron stars spiral into each other, they generate ripples that propagate outward at the speed of light. The energy they carry is enormous, yet by the time they reach Earth, the distortions are minuscule, stretching or squeezing matter by fractions smaller than the diameter of an atom. Your body, the room you inhabit, even the planet beneath your feet, is continuously penetrated by these undetectable motions, reminders that the universe is in constant, imperceptible motion. What appears still, stable, and silent is actually immersed in a current of forces you cannot perceive. Gravitational waves also transmit information about the cosmos. The collisions that generate them encode details about mass, spin, and dynamics of celestial objects. Instruments such as LIGO and Virgo translate these ripples into data, allowing scientists to reconstruct events occurring millions or billions of years ago. This invisible energy is a messenger, passing through the emptiness of space and the matter of your own body, connecting you, indirectly, to the far reaches of the universe. Reality is not only invisible at this scale, it is communicative, transmitting structure and history in waves you cannot detect unaided. These waves reveal that the universe is far more interconnected than it seems. The space you inhabit, which feels isolated and local, is continuously influenced by distant cosmic events. A collision of black holes in a galaxy, millions of light years away, subtly affects the space around you, altering distances imperceptibly. The local and the distant are inseparable, bound by the invisible medium of space-time itself. The silence you perceive is deceptive. The universe is alive with motion and influence, and most of it occurs without leaving a sensory trace. Even more unsettling is the scale of these forces. Gravitational waves are cumulative. Each event adds to the background, a constant hum of undetectable energy permeating the cosmos. You exist within this background, immersed in a subtle sea of motion that your senses cannot register. The stability of your surroundings, the furniture, the walls, even the ground beneath you, is maintained not by immunity to these forces, but by the relative weakness of their distortions and the overwhelming presence of other forces like electromagnetism and nuclear interaction. Reality appears solid and unchanging only because these invisible waves are subtle, yet they are omnipresent. Philosophically, this reshapes your understanding of stillness and motion. Stillness is an illusion. Motion is continuous, relentless, and imperceptible at human scales. The universe is not static, not isolated, not confined to what you can sense. Your body, your environment, even the earth itself, is part of a dynamic medium, traversed by energies and influences that you cannot feel. The cosmos is a symphony of hidden motion, with waves silently orchestrating structure, motion, and interaction across unimaginable distances. To exist is to be immersed in imperceptible energy, continually influenced by motions that you cannot detect. The universe is alive with invisible waves, connecting you to events in distant galaxies, linking the very fabric of space across cosmic scales. Reality is not a collection of static objects, but a vast network of imperceptible forces, motions, and histories. Everything you perceive as solid, stable, or local is actually a temporary configuration within a medium of constant, invisible influence, a reminder that the majority of reality moves without your awareness, shaping existence silently and profoundly. The limits of sight. Your eyes perceive a narrow sliver of reality. Beyond visible light, vast spectra of electromagnetic waves traverse the cosmos. Infrared, ultraviolet, radio, gamma, they all exist simultaneously, affecting matter, energy, and time, but eluding your senses entirely. The colors you see, the brightness of the sun, the light reflecting off a wall, they are only a fraction of the activity surrounding you. The universe is bathed in radiation you cannot perceive, an invisible ocean of influence flowing through your body and your environment, unnoticed yet constantly shaping the world you experience. Consider infrared radiation. Every object with a temperature above absolute zero emits it, from your own body to the walls of your room to distant stars. You cannot see this light, yet it carries energy, interacts with matter, and can warm surfaces. The warmth you feel from sunlight or a fire is partly due to these invisible photons. They penetrate space without requiring contact, yet their presence is tangible in consequence. The electromagnetic spectrum you perceive is only the tip of a vast continuum, and the unseen majority governs interactions you cannot directly observe. Ultraviolet light demonstrates another hidden layer of reality. It triggers chemical reactions, drives the formation of vitamin D in your skin, and can damage or alter molecules in ways your senses cannot detect. The sun bathes the earth in ultraviolet radiation constantly, yet you experience it only indirectly through warmth or sunburn. Every molecule of matter, every living cell, is continuously influenced by forces and energy that remain imperceptible. The world you trust as fully visible is in fact shaped by layers of reality that your eyes cannot penetrate. Radio waves, microwaves, X-rays extend this hidden spectrum further. They traverse vast distances, carry information, and interact with matter without your knowledge. Communications, imaging technologies, and cosmic signals rely entirely on these unseen waves. Stars emit X-rays, pulsars send radio pulses, and the cosmic microwave background permeates space, all forming an invisible tapestry that underpins the observable universe. You exist within a medium of energy and information that your perception cannot reach, and yet this medium governs everything from atomic behavior to galactic evolution. Gamma rays, the most energetic form of electromagnetic radiation, penetrate the cosmos, reshaping matter and energy at the atomic and nuclear level. Supernova and other cataclysmic events send bursts across space that pass through planets, stars, and your body, largely unnoticed. You inhabit a universe where high-energy phenomena are constantly in motion around you, invisible yet consequential. The very matter composing your environment and your body interacts with this unseen radiation, even if you remain unaware. Philosophically, this reveals the fragility of human perception. You trust your eyes to convey reality, yet they access only an infinitesimal fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. Most of the universe, the light, energy, and forces that shape existence, is invisible, eluding perception entirely. Your understanding of reality is inherently incomplete, limited by the narrow senses evolution has provided. The cosmos is not only stranger than you imagine, it is largely hidden from you, existing in forms you cannot detect, yet continuously influencing every aspect of your life. Even the passage of time and the behavior of matter are filtered through these invisible waves. They carry energy, information, and momentum, subtly affecting atoms, molecules, and larger structures. You walk through a sea of imperceptible influence, unaware of the constant interactions shaping your world. Reality, as experienced, is a thin projection onto the visible spectrum, a limited slice of a universe rich with activity, force, and information that you cannot sense. Most of what exists, moves, and acts around you is beyond the reach of sight, yet it is inseparable from everything you perceive. To live is to inhabit a world defined by the invisible. Your senses, your perception, and your understanding filter reality to a narrow band, while the majority of the universe flows around, through, and beyond you. Infrared, ultraviolet, the radio, gamma, the unseen waves press upon matter, convey energy, and transmit information across space and time, all without your knowledge. The limits of sight are the limits of perception, yet the universe continues, vast and active, in dimensions your eyes cannot reach. The visible is only a fraction. The invisible is everywhere. The unseen architecture of space is not passive. It can curve, twist, and expand, governed by mass and energy. The distances you measure are not absolute. They are elastic, influenced by unseen forces. What seems empty is structured, dynamic, and alive with geometric complexity. The familiar notion of straight lines and fixed distances collapses under the lens of modern physics. A ruler cannot fully capture space's true nature, for the fabric itself is flexible, responding to the presence of mass and energy, warping and stretching in ways invisible yet profoundly consequential. Consider gravity not as a force acting at a distance, but as the manifestation of curvature in space-time. A planet orbits a star not because it is pulled by an invisible string, but because the space around it bends, guiding its trajectory along curved paths. The empty void is active, shaping motion and structure with a precision you cannot perceive. What you interpret as movement and force is actually the response of matter to the geometry of the space it occupies. Space is no longer a stage. It is an active participant, a medium that structures reality silently, invisibly, and inevitably. Even light, which travels at the universe's speed limit, is influenced by this architecture. Photons follow curved paths around massive objects, bending and twisting along invisible contours. Gravitational lensing allows distant galaxies to appear distorted or duplicated, a visible confirmation that space itself is dynamic. The emptiness you assume to be passive is in fact a flexible medium capable of reshaping reality, bending perception, and transmitting influence across vast distances. The void is alive with structure, and its geometry defines the very behavior of matter and energy. The elasticity of space extends to cosmic scales. The universe is expanding, stretching distances between galaxies in a way that is imperceptible in daily experience, but dominant on grand scales. This expansion is driven not by objects moving through space, but by space itself growing, carrying galaxies along for the ride. The emptiness between stars and clusters is dynamic, not static. What you perceive as fixed or eternal is in constant flux, expanding invisibly, reshaping distances, and defining the scale of cosmic interactions. Reality is not fixed. It is a living geometric network, continuously adjusted by forces you cannot feel. Even at smaller scales, space is not uniform. Quantum fluctuations suggest that the vacuum is irregular, seething with ephemeral energy and subtle distortions. The emptiness within atoms and between particles is filled with activity, with fields that curve, fluctuate, and influence behavior. The geometry of space underlies the structure of matter itself, determining how atoms bond, how particles interact, and how forces propagate. What feels stable, solid, or inert is in fact a temporary alignment of dynamic, yet invisible architecture. Philosophically, this challenges your intuition about reality. You assume that space is a passive container, a neutral backdrop against which events unfold. In truth, space is active, structured, and responsive. Distances are relative, motions are guided by curvature, and the geometry of the void defines everything from planetary orbits to the behavior of fundamental particles. The empty regions you ignore, the gaps you assume are irrelevant, are instead the stage upon which existence is orchestrated. Your perception of emptiness is only a surface-level understanding of a complex, invisible framework. To inhabit this universe is to live within a medium that is alive with structure and influence. Every step, every gaze into the night sky, every calculation of distance is shaped by the unseen architecture of space. The void is not nothing. It is a landscape of curves, stretches, and invisible scaffolding that guides the behavior of matter and energy. The solidity of objects, the paths of planets, even the passage of light itself, all emerge from this dynamic, invisible geometry. Space is not the absence of substance. It is an active, structured, and essential participant in reality, a living architecture you can feel only indirectly, yet which governs everything you observe. Time's hidden grain. You experience time as continuous, flowing like a river, but at quantum scales, it may be discrete, a succession of infinitesimal ticks. The world you perceive as smooth may actually be stitched together from invisible, indivisible quanta of duration. Your thoughts, movements, and experiences, which feel seamless, may be the result of countless, unperceived steps, each building upon the last. What you feel as the uninterrupted present could instead be a series of fleeting instants linked together so precisely that continuity is only an illusion. Consider the implications for motion. When you reach for a cup or take a step, your body moves through space and time as a single, fluid event. But if time is quantized, each movement is composed of discrete temporal units. The hand does not sweep smoothly, it hops through a sequence of imperceptibly short intervals, guided by the underlying ticks of time's grain. Each instant is a frame, each frame invisible, yet together they construct the seamless reality you inhabit. Smoothness, permanence, and flow may be nothing more than the consequence of limitations in perception. At the quantum level, this discreteness aligns with how particles behave. Energy levels, particle states, and even the interactions of fields are quantized. If time itself shares this property, then causality is not continuous either. It is a series of events occurring in rapid succession, with each tick determining the next. The world you experience as a fluid continuum is actually a chain of discrete outcomes, each dependent upon the invisible structure of time. The familiar sense of duration is constructed, emergent, and contingent upon an underlying lattice of temporal granularity. This hidden grain of time also reframes your understanding of memory and experience. Moments you perceive as extended, watching sunlight filter through a window, listening to a single note, feeling the warmth of a hand, may be composed of countless, unperceived quanta. Your consciousness bridges these intervals seamlessly, creating continuity where there is none. You live in an emergent flow, yet the substratum of reality may be discrete, each tick carrying both the potential and limitation of the next. The past, present, and future may exist as points in an imperceptibly fine lattice, with motion, causality, and change occurring only at these fundamental intervals. Even at macroscopic scales, the possibility of discrete time introduces subtle consequences. If each instant is indivisible, then processes we consider continuous. Light traveling, sound propagating, motion unfolding are actually sequences of micro-events. The universe is not smooth, but pixelated, a vast mosaic in which continuity is constructed by the staggering speed and coordination of these infinitesimal units. The flowing river of reality may be more like a frame-by-frame projection, with continuity emerging from imperceptible discreteness. Philosophically, this challenges your intuition about existence. You trust your experience of time as a flowing medium, yet the foundation may be granular. What feels eternal, unbroken, or seamless is potentially an emergent illusion, a product of perceptual limits and underlying quantization. Your life, your movements, your awareness, all are enacted across a hidden lattice of intervals you cannot detect, yet which govern the structure of cause and effect, the propagation of information, and the coherence of reality itself. To inhabit a universe with a hidden temporal grain is to exist in a paradoxical landscape smooth to perception, discrete to reality. Every second of experience, every heartbeat, every thought may occur atop a scaffolding of indivisible instance, stitched together invisibly. Continuity is constructed, motion is quantized, and the passage of time is both familiar and profoundly unknowable. You live in a river of moments that may not flow at all, a present stitched from countless invisible quanta, each imperceptibly guiding the next, creating the seamless world you trust, but only by illusion, the entropy of nothing. Even empty space possesses entropy, a measure of hidden disorder. The universe's tendency toward chaos operates in the invisible substrate of reality, silently reshaping the distribution of energy and matter, subtly altering the world you assume is stable. You imagine emptiness as quiet, inert, and uniform. Yet the vacuum is threaded with microscopic fluctuations, a restless medium where energy and potential continually rearrange themselves. The apparent stillness of your surroundings, your room, the air around you, even the atoms within your own body, is only a temporary snapshot, maintained against an underlying current of invisible disorder. Entropy is often described in terms of heat or molecular motion, but it exists everywhere, even in the void. Even when no particles occupy a region of space, the uncertainty inherent in quantum mechanics implies a range of possible configurations for energy and virtual particles. This hidden disorder is not idle. It influences the behavior of matter, governs the likelihood of events, and sets the direction of time itself. The stability you take for granted is a fragile emergent pattern, precariously balanced atop a sea of microscopic unpredictability. Consider the cosmos on a large scale. Galaxies rotate, stars burn, planets orbit, and yet all of these visible structures exist within a framework of rising entropy. Gravitational clumping, radiation dispersal, and thermal processes are all guided by the universe's inexorable drift toward disorder. You perceive coherent systems, from the human body to planetary atmospheres, as stable, yet entropy operates silently in the background, imperceptibly nudging energy and matter toward more probable, more chaotic configurations. Stability is not fundamental, it is temporary, provisional, and continually challenged by invisible forces. At the quantum level, entropy manifests even more subtly. Virtual particles flicker into and out of existence, fields fluctuate, and probabilities shift without warning. Every quantum event is a tiny reshuffling of possibilities, an adjustment of the hidden order. The world you experience as continuous and predictable is underpinned by these imperceptible fluctuations, a lattice of uncertainty in which chance dictates the potential outcomes of reality. What you consider deterministic is in fact probabilistic, structured by the restless grain of the invisible. Even your own body is subject to these invisible currents. Molecular motion, heat exchange, chemical reactions, all are governed by entropy. Each heartbeat, each thought, each breath occurs against a background of energy distributions, subtly influenced by chance and disorder. The apparent permanence of your cells, your memories, and your tissues is maintained only by continuous energy input, resisting the natural drift toward equilibrium and chaos. You are a temporary island of order within a sea of invisible instability, a structure emerging and persisting against forces that operate beyond perception. Philosophically, this redefines your sense of permanence and security. You trust that objects, environments, and even time itself are coherent and stable, yet everything exists within a context of inevitable disorder. The vacuum, the emptiness, the spaces you ignore are not passive. They are active, constantly shaping the potential for change, subtly influencing the distribution of energy, and guiding the evolution of reality. The apparent solidity and constancy of your world are provisional, contingent, and vulnerable to the invisible hand of entropy. To exist is to be perpetually immersed in the quiet work of disorder. Every moment, the energy and matter are nudged towards states of greater probability, subtly rearranging the cosmos, unseen, imperceptible, yet inexorable. What feels stable, enduring, and real is in fact provisional, a delicate pattern imposed atop an ever-shifting, invisible substrate. The universe operates as a ceaseless engine of entropy, weaving chaos into the fabric of space, time, and matter, silently redefining the boundaries of order and disorder, and reminding you that the world is never as fixed or permanent as it appears. The strange reality of probability. Quantum mechanics replaces certainty with probability. Particles do not occupy fixed positions until observed. The objects you trust as solid may exist in multiple potential states simultaneously, an invisible uncertainty underlying your apparent stability. You assume your environment is well defined. A cup rests on a table, the floor supports your weight, a chair holds your body. Yet, at the quantum level, each of these objects is a blur of possibilities, a cloud of probabilities that only collapses into a specific configuration when measured or observed. Reality is less a fixed tableau and more a dynamic field of potential, momentarily crystallized into the forms you perceive. Every atom, every electron, every photon exists in a haze of likelihoods until interacted with. An electron does not follow a single path. It explores every potential route simultaneously, a wave of probability collapsing into particle-like behavior only under observation. Your perception and the instruments you build to extend it are the filters through which the universe resolves its infinite possibilities into the concrete events you experience. Without observation, matter is undefined, a spectrum of potential states hovering invisibly across space and time. This uncertainty is not limited to microscopic particles. It scales subtly upward, influencing chemical reactions, biological processes, and even the structure of matter itself. The solidity of your hand, the firmness of a table, the coherence of a crystal lattice, all emerge from countless quantum interactions, each governed by chance. The probability of each particle's position, momentum, and interaction combines to create the patterns you interpret as stability. What you perceive as determinism is a statistical artifact, the emergent consequence of innumerable uncertainties averaging into apparent predictability. Probability also challenges your sense of causality. Cause and effects are no longer strictly deterministic. The outcome of a quantum event is not fully determined until it occurs. When you switch on a light or pour water into a glass, microscopic uncertainties ripple through the processes, influencing pathways, reaction timings, and even the energy distributions involved. At macroscopic scales, these effects are typically averaged out, hidden behind the illusion of predictability. But the foundation of reality is always probabilistic, built upon potentialities rather than certainties. The ground beneath your feet, the air you breathe, the objects you touch, they all exist in a continuum of possible states resolved only in the act of interaction. Entanglement magnifies this strangeness. Two particles, once linked, maintain correlations even across vast distances. The probability of one particle's state is instantly connected to the probability of the other, regardless of separation. Your perception of independent, localized objects is undermined by this invisible web of potential correlations. The universe is not a collection of isolated certainties. It is a network of interdependent probabilities, continuously influencing one another, invisibly orchestrating outcomes in ways you cannot directly perceive. Philosophically, this destabilizes your sense of existence. You inhabit a world that feels solid, continuous, and predictable, yet beneath the surface lies a vast uncertainty. Every object, every interaction, every movement is the result of countless probabilistic events. They're resolved into specific outcomes, only moment by moment. Stability, solidity, and determinacy are emergent illusions imposed upon a substrate that is inherently fluid, undefined, and unpredictable. What seems permanent is provisional. What seems fixed is an ephemeral crystallization of chance. To exist in such a universe is to occupy a space where potential outweighs certainty, where invisible uncertainties underpin all that you trust, and where every measurement, observation, and interaction is a temporary resolution of infinite possibilities. Reality is less a fixed landscape and more a shifting cloud of probability, an invisible uncertainty permeating every particle, every object, every moment, reminding you that the solidity and stability you rely upon are contingent, fleeting, and never absolute. Fields beyond comprehension, magnetic and electric fields thread through space, bending the paths of particles, influencing atoms and molecules, yet remaining invisible and intangible. You exist in a sea of forces that you can neither see nor feel, shaping your actions moment by moment. The electrons in your body, the atoms composing the chair you sit on, the air flowing past your skin, all respond continuously to these unseen fields. Every interaction, every motion, every subtle chemical reaction occurs within an environment dominated by invisible influences that guide behavior at scales both microscopic and cosmic. What you perceive as your own agency, as the stability of your surroundings, is subtly orchestrated by forces you cannot sense. Consider the electric fields generated by charges in your own body. Neurons fire, ions move across membranes, and your muscles contract, all in accordance with the precise influence of electrical gradients. Every thought, every movement is mediated by fields that exist independently of your awareness. You cannot perceive the lines of force threading through space, yet they determine the paths along which electrons flow, the timing of chemical reactions, and the behavior of matter. The invisible is not optional, it is essential. Without these fields, nothing functions, nothing coheres, nothing persists. Magnetic fields extend this influence further. Earth itself produces a vast magnetic envelope, shaping the motion of charged particles in the atmosphere and the solar wind. Your body, instruments, and technologies operate within this invisible web, responding in ways you cannot detect. The particles in your immediate environment, electrons, ions, photons, are guided along paths defined by fields stretching across kilometers, sometimes extending millions of kilometers into space. The magnetic and electric structure of the cosmos is continuously active, a silent scaffolding upon which all visible phenomena unfold. At the atomic scale, these fields determine the architecture of matter. Electrons orbit nuclei along paths defined by electric potentials. Chemical bonds form and break according to the interplay of repulsive and attractive forces, themselves manifestations of fields extending through space. The molecules in your body, the oxygen you inhale, the proteins that fold into precise shapes, all are products of invisible, intangible structures. Solidity, shape, reactivity, even life itself emerges from patterns dictated by forces you cannot see or touch. Your perception of material reality is a projection imposed upon a substrate governed by unseen fields. Fields also mediate interactions across vast distances. Light, composed of oscillating electric and magnetic fields, propagates through the vacuum, influencing matter far from its source. Radio signals, X-rays, and cosmic radiation travel along these invisible structures, carrying energy and information without leaving a perceptible trace. The universe is a network of fields connecting particles, stars, and galaxies through relationships that are never directly sensed, yet are constantly active. What you interpret as empty space is instead a dense weave of dynamic, invisible influences. Philosophically, this realization destabilizes the notion of independence. You assume that objects, bodies, and processes are autonomous, that movement and change originate solely from themselves. In reality, every particle, every action, every thought is embedded in a lattice of invisible forces. Your body, your environment, the cosmos itself, is a manifestation of interactions mediated by fields beyond perception. Stability is contingent. Agency is entangled with forces you cannot experience directly. To inhabit this universe is to exist within a constant flux of invisible guidance. You move, act, and think surrounded by structures that shape every possibility, yet remain hidden from perception. Electric and magnetic fields thread the cosmos, orchestrating interactions from the atomic to the galactic, producing coherence, motion, then stability out of what you perceive as empty space. Reality is not only more complex than your senses reveal, it is defined by invisible influences, and you live your entire life within a network of forces that you can never see, feel, or fully comprehend. The world is held together by the intangible, and you are inseparably immersed in it. The unmeasured universe. Every measurement you make is limited, filtered, and incomplete. Reality is far more expansive than your ability to observe. The universe contains an infinite reservoir of structures, interactions, and phenomena that remain perpetually beyond perception. Instruments extend your senses, yet even they reveal only fractions of what exists. Every telescope, microscope, and detector translates raw signals into data your mind can interpret. But each measurement is a narrow window, a finite slice through the vastness of existence. The cosmos is immeasurable, and what you claim as knowledge is always provisional, constrained by the limitations of observation and the tools at your disposal. Consider the scale of what you cannot measure. Between the atoms in your body, quantum fluctuations occur, fields ripple, and particles emerge and vanish spontaneously. These events are real, yet undetectable without sophisticated apparatus, and even then, they are inferred rather than fully observed. On galactic scales, phenomena like dark matter and dark energy dominate the cosmos. shaping the motion of stars and the expansion of space itself. But their existence is inferred from gravitational effects, not direct perception. The universe constantly operates beyond the reach of your senses, silently organizing and transforming itself in ways you cannot directly witness. Every measurement you take also influences the system you observe. At quantum scales, the act of observation collapses probabilities into a single outcome, revealing one possible reality while leaving others unrealized. Reality, in a sense, is partly created by measurement and partly hidden from it. This inherent incompleteness means that the universe is never fully knowable, even in principle. Each data point, each reading, each observation is a partial map of a terrain, too vast, too subtle, and too dynamic to capture entirely. What you perceive as knowledge is a fragile approximation, built atop an ocean of invisible and unquantifiable interactions. The limitations of measurement extend into every dimension of existence: time, space, energy, though and matter are all filtered through instruments with finite resolution. You cannot perceive the smallest quanta of time, the minutest fluctuations of energy, or the deepest structures of space without mediation. Even large-scale structures, the shapes of galaxies, the distribution of cosmic filaments, are interpreted through limited surveys, constrained by observational biases and technical boundaries. The universe is not just larger than you imagine, it is fundamentally inaccessible in its totality, an ever-expanding frontier of the unseen. Philosophically, this reframes your understanding of reality. You trust in measurements, in charts, graphs, and readings, yet every observation is a translation, an approximation, a fragment of a much broader truth. The cosmos is not a fixed, fully knowable object, but an immense and unmeasured entity whose complexity exceeds any attempt at complete comprehension. You live surrounded by layers of existence that are unrecorded, unperceived, and in principle unreachable, and yet they shape every interaction, every trajectory, every motion in the universe. Even your own experience is limited. Sensory perception, cognition, and memory filter reality into manageable portions, leaving the majority unrecorded. You inhabit a local, partial perspective, a finite window on an infinite, unmeasured expanse. Every thought, every motion, every choice occurs within this narrow slide. Yet the full context, the interplay of forces, fields, and structures beyond perception, continues without interruption, beyond your ability to quantify or control. The universe exists not for observation, but as a complex, unmeasured continuum, the indifferent to the limits of perception and the reach of instruments. To exist in the unmeasured universe is to be immersed in a reality that is simultaneously accessible and inaccessible, knowable and unknowable. You interact with a fraction of existence, while the vast majority unfolds silently, invisibly, and perpetually beyond the reach of observation. Every measurement, every observation, every attempt to quantify the cosmos is a conversation with a universe that refuses completeness. What you know is provisional, what you cannot know is infinite, and the space between these extremes, the unmeasured, defines the vast, invisible architecture in which you exist. The cosmic web galaxies are not scattered randomly. They follow invisible filaments of dark matter, forming a vast cosmic web. What you perceive as emptiness is full of hidden structure, connecting all matter in patterns you cannot detect with the naked eye. The stars, clusters, and galaxies you see are the illuminated nodes of an immense scaffold, woven from a substance that neither emits nor absorbs light. The universe is not a random collection of points, but a network of hidden strands, silently shaping motion, gravity, and the evolution of cosmic structures over billions of years. This web is composed primarily of dark matter, which outweighs visible matter by a factor of 5. You cannot see it, touch it, or directly detect it, yet it governs the assembly of galaxies, the formation of clusters, and the flow of cosmic filaments across space. Every galaxy you observe follows paths dictated by these invisible filaments. Even the solar system itself traces its position relative to these hidden structures, moving in accordance with a framework beyond perception. The universe is bound by a hidden architecture, and the emptiness you assume as void is instead a complex lattice guiding the behavior of all that you can see. Gravity acts along this web. Matter falls into the filaments, accumulates at intersections, and organizes itself in ways that would appear impossible without the invisible scaffolding of dark matter. The spaces between galaxies are not truly empty. They are corridors along which matter and energy flow, shaped by a framework that is fundamentally unobservable. What you interpret as void is instead a channel of influence, a conduit through which the universe arranges itself at the largest scales. Your perception of isolation between galaxies is an illusion. Everything is connected through this hidden network. The cosmic web also defines the evolution of time and space. Galaxies coalesce, collide, and merge along its filaments. Massive clusters anchor themselves at intersections, while streams of gas, dust, and dark matter flow along the threads. Structures you perceive as independent or random are the emergent outcomes of a vast, invisible influence. The universe is not chaotic at large scales. It is ordered according to patterns you cannot sense, a hidden geometry that dictates the arrangement of matter over billions of light years. Even light and radiation are affected. Photons traveling through the cosmic web bend slightly as they pass near massive filaments, creating subtle distortions, arcs, depth and lensing effects that astronomers detect with great care. These distortions are evidence of the hidden structure, yet they remain imperceptible to direct observation. The universe that seems sparse and empty is threaded with the contours of unseen matter, silently dictating the trajectories of every galaxy, star, and particle. Philosophically, the cosmic web underscores the invisibility of most of reality. You assume space is mostly empty, punctuated by isolated objects, yet the majority of the universe is hidden, structured, and dynamic. The framework connecting all matter is invisible, yet it is the primary architect of cosmic behavior. Stability, distribution, and motion at the largest scales are the product of structures you cannot perceive, forces you cannot measure directly, and patterns you cannot sense. The reality is not merely what is visible, it is defined by what is hidden. To exist within the cosmic web is to live immersed in a universe whose large structures are beyond your perception. Every galaxy, every star, every atom is positioned according to influences that are invisible and intangible. What you see as emptiness is full of tension, structure, and connection, a lattice of hidden matter guiding the cosmos. The universe is not a collection of isolated points, but a vast, interconnected web. silently shaping everything in ways you can sense only indirectly. The visible is minor. The invisible defines reality. Virtual particles and the fabric of reality. Particles that exist fleetingly, then vanish, fill space with transient activity. These virtual particles influence forces and energies, leaving traces in phenomena like the Casimir effect. Reality is animated by entities you cannot hope to observe directly. You live within a sea of ceaseless, invisible emergence. Each moment, countless pairs of particles blink into existence and vanish, leaving behind subtle fingerprints that shape interactions between matter and energy. What appears as stable and empty is in truth a restless field of activity, a hidden undercurrent orchestrating the behavior of the universe at every scale. Even the vacuum of space is far from passive. These virtual particles exert measurable effects. When two uncharged plates are placed extremely close together, they experience a force that arises from the suppression of certain virtual particle fluctuations between them. This Casimir effect is a tangible demonstration of the invisible dance occurring throughout the cosmos. It is evidence that the emptiness you perceive is alive with transient phenomena, constantly influencing the physical world, shaping forces and energies in ways your senses cannot detect. What you experience as solid, as empty, as inert, is in fact a product of relentless, imperceptible activity. These ephemeral particles also mediate the fundamental forces. Photons, the carriers of the electromagnetic force, can emerge virtually, transmitting energy between charged particles. Gluons, virtual as well as real, bind quarks into protons and neutrons. Even gravity may arise from fluctuations in fields permeating space. Every interaction in the universe is, in some way, dependent on these invisible agents, which leave no direct trace, yet dictate the rules of engagement for matter and energy. The stability of atoms, the structure of molecules, the cohesion of planets, and the behavior of light all emerge from this hidden, transient foundation. At quantum scales, the ceaseless flickering of virtual particles contributes to the apparent uncertainty and randomness of reality. They temporarily borrow energy from the vacuum, interact, and vanish within moments so brief they evade direct observation. Yet their presence is not hypothetical. The effects of these fleeting existences accumulate, influencing particle masses, energy levels, and even the decay rates of atoms. The universe, at its most fundamental level, is not a passive stage, but a dynamic, seething medium of transient events, imperceptibly orchestrating the emergence of reality as you perceive it. The philosophical implications are profound. You assume that matter, forces, and energy exist in well-defined forms, occupying discrete and stable locations. In truth, they emerge from an ephemeral substrate of activity that cannot be perceived directly. Stability is not fundamental, it is emergent, maintained by the continuous and invisible contributions of particles that never truly exist. The world you experience is an interface, a temporary crystallization of a restless virtual reality that pulses beneath perception, shaping the observable universe in subtle yet essential ways. Even at macroscopic scales, these virtual phenomena leave traces. Electromagnetic interactions, chemical bonding, and even the radiation that warms your skin are shaped by underlying fluctuations. The air you breathe, the screen you read, even the floor beneath your feet, All are structured and stabilized by countless events you cannot sense. Every stable object, every persistent phenomenon is the visible consequence of countless invisible flickers, the product of forces mediated by entities that exist only in instantaneous glimpses. To inhabit this universe is to exist within a continuously animated, imperceptible framework. Virtual particles rise and vanish in every cubic centimeter of space, guiding forces, influencing energy, and sustaining the coherence of reality itself. The solidity, structure, and persistence of the world are only provisional, the outcome of interactions that are fundamentally hidden. What you perceive as reality is a surface projection, a brief crystallization atop a foundation of constant, invisible activity, a reality built upon particles that are never truly present, yet never truly absent. The paradox of observation. Observation itself alters the universe. At quantum scales, measurement collapses probabilities into realities. Your act of seeing or measuring is not passive. It interacts with the invisible substratum of existence, shaping what becomes real. You might assume that the world exists independently of your awareness, that things have positions, velocities, and states regardless of whether they are noticed. Yet at the microscopic level, this assumption breaks down. A particle does not occupy a single, definite position until it is observed. The universe, in some respect, waits for interaction, poised between multiple potential outcomes, and your measurement acts as a bridge from possibility to actuality. Consider the double-slit experiment. When electrons pass through two slits without being observed, they form an interference pattern, as though each electron simultaneously explores all paths. When a detector is introduced to observe which slit each electron passes through, the interference pattern disappears. The act of observation changes the behavior of the particle, collapsing a cloud of probabilities into a discrete trajectory. Your perception, your instruments, your awareness are not merely passive witnesses. They are participants in the formation of reality itself. The world you assume as independent is in subtle yet fundamental ways contingent on interaction. This principle extends to all quantum systems. Atoms, photons, and subatomic particles exist in superpositions, states of multiple potentialities. The probabilities of each outcome are well defined mathematically, yet until measured, they do not resolve into a single reality. Your observation, or any interaction with a sufficiently sensitive system, forces a choice, determining which possibility manifests. The invisible substratum of reality is not preordained. It is dynamically shaped by measurement, a delicate interplay between potential and realized state. Even macroscopic systems, though largely averaged, are influenced indirectly by these principles. Chemical reactions, energy transfers, and molecular structures all emerge from countless quantum events. Each observation, each interaction, collapses probabilities at a local level, shaping the outcomes that cascade upward into observable phenomena. The stability of the world, its apparent determinacy, is built upon a substrate of uncertainty that is continuously resolved, in part, by interactions you cannot fully trace. Your measurements echo through this hidden foundation, guiding the evolution of reality in ways that are subtle yet unavoidable. Philosophically, this challenges the most basic assumptions about existence. You assume that objects exist in definite states independent of perception. Yet at the quantum level, this is false. What you see, what you measure, what you detect, is only one of many possible realities, momentarily crystallized through interaction. The invisible substratum of reality is not merely hidden, it is participatory, shaped in part by the act of observation itself. Certainty is provisional, reality is emergent. Your very presence in the universe becomes entangled with its fundamental processes. Every photon that strikes your retina, every particle that interacts with your instruments, every measurement you make is an engagement with the probabilistic substrate of existence. Observation is not neutral, it is a form of influence. The universe is simultaneously independent and dependent, objective and interactive, visible and fundamentally indeterminate until engaged with. Your awareness is inseparable from the unfolding of potential into actuality. To inhabit this universe is to live in a reality that reacts to perception that is partially defined by the act of noticing, measuring, or interacting. The solidity and continuity you take for granted emerge from a dance between chance and observation, between the invisible substratum and your engagement with it. What you perceive as stable, autonomous, and independent is always provisional, always contingent upon interactions that collapse the myriad potentials of the quantum realm into the tangible world you experience. The universe is, in part, what you make it simply by observing it, the scale of the unseen. The vast majority of the universe is composed of scales you cannot perceive. The microscopic structures of quantum fields, the macroscopic expanse of dark matter, the colossal stretches between galaxy clusters. Reality is largely inaccessible, a landscape dominated by the invisible. You assume that what you can see, touch, and measure constitutes the majority of existence, yet this is profoundly misleading. The atoms in your body, the air around you, the objects you manipulate are minuscule fractions of the cosmic total. Even these are built atop subatomic phenomena and quantum fields that elude direct perception. The universe you experience is only a narrow window into an almost incomprehensibly vast reality. At microscopic scales, quantum fields dictate existence. Particles appear and vanish, probabilities determine behavior, and energy fluctuates in ways that cannot be observed without sophisticated instruments. The processes you take for granted, chemical reactions, electrical impulses, atomic vibrations, emerge from these invisible, infinitesimal events. You live your life atop a foundation that is almost entirely unobservable, a world structured by interactions occurring beyond the reach of your senses. The reality of these tiny scales is not marginal, it is the framework upon which all visible phenomena rest. At the other extreme, the universe is dominated by structures beyond perception. Dark matter forms vast filaments and scaffolds, threading galaxies into a cosmic web that stretches billions of light years. Dark energy drives the expansion of space itself, accelerating galaxies apart in directions and at speeds you cannot witness. The distances between clusters of galaxies dwarf any human scale, yet they define the dynamics of the cosmos. What you perceive as empty space is in truth a vast and structured territory, mostly invisible, mostly unmeasured, yet profoundly influential on the motion, formation, and evolution of all visible matter. These extremes, quantum and cosmic, are joined by layers of intermediate scales that are equally inaccessible. Gravitational waves ripple across space-time, passing through stars, planets, and your own body without notice. Fields of force guide electrons and nuclei. Photons transmit energy across the void, and neutrinos stream through you by the trillions every second. Every observable object, every event, every motion exists within an ocean of unseen influence. The stability and coherence of your world are emergent properties of interactions that cannot be perceived directly, a consequence of vast networks of invisible causation operating across scales you cannot imagine. Philosophically, the dominance of the unseen challenges your sense of significance. You live immersed in structures and processes that are imperceptible, yet they govern the behavior of everything you experience. The atoms composing your hand are mostly empty space, bound by forces you cannot sense. The galaxies you see with telescopes trace patterns defined by dark matter. The flow of time, the propagation of light, the structure of space, all are mediated by unseen phenomena. The visible and tangible is a mere fraction of existence. The invisible is the bulk, the scaffolding, and the engine of reality. To inhabit this universe is to occupy a space dominated by the unseen. The microscopic and macroscopic, the quantum and the cosmic, form a continuum of invisibility in which all observable reality is embedded. What you perceive as familiar, objects, distances, motions, interactions, is only a thin veneer atop a vast, inaccessible substrate. Reality is not mostly known, it is mostly hidden, composed of scales beyond perception, structures beyond observation, and processes beyond comprehension. You exist within a universe where invisibility defines the contours of existence, and the tangible world is a fleeting projection of phenomena that are largely, overwhelmingly unseen. Gravity's quiet rule. You feel gravity as weight, but its influence extends far beyond perception. It warps space-time, governs planetary motion, and shapes galaxies, all while remaining invisible. The structure of reality is determined by a force you cannot see, only infer. Every object, from the pen in your hand to the stars in distant galaxies, moves according to this subtle yet pervasive influence. You perceive it passively as the pull that anchors you to Earth, yet gravity extends across the universe, silently orchestrating the motion of planets, stars, and entire galaxies with a reach and precision that exceeds comprehension. Consider the elegance of orbital motion. When planets follow elliptical paths around stars, not because of a visible tether, but because mass curves the fabric of space-time. The path traced by every planet is a silent negotiation with this invisible geometry. Gravity does not announce itself. It is an omnipresent guide, bending trajectories and ensuring stability. The stability you rely on in your everyday environment, walking across the room, resting on a chair, is maintained by the same principle that keeps entire galaxies coherent, a principle utterly intangible and unobservable without inference. On larger scales, gravity shapes the architecture of the universe. Galaxies form, clusters aggregate, and cosmic filaments stretch across billions of light years, all guided by the pull of invisible mass. Dark matter, though unseen, exerts gravitational influence that holds galaxies together and molds the cosmic web. Stars orbit along paths dictated by forces they cannot detect. Planets align along curves invisible to the naked eye, and light itself bends as it passes near massive objects. Reality, at every scale, is sculpted by a force whose presence is felt only through its effects, a quiet architect of cosmic order. Even in your immediate surroundings, Gravity orchestrates phenomena you take for granted. Tides rise and fall because the moon and sun tug upon Earth's oceans with a subtle, pervasive force. Objects fall to the ground, fluids float downward, and the air itself conforms to gravitational gradients. The invisible influence of mass extends in every direction, shaping matter and energy, guiding interactions without ever revealing itself. You interpret motion as natural and inevitable, yet it is the product of an unseen, continuous negotiation with space-time itself. At the quantum level, gravity remains enigmatic yet omnipresent. Though its effects are weaker compared to other fundamental forces, it still underlies the framework in which all particles exist. The curvature of space-time, minuscule though it may be at atomic scales, is a canvas upon which quantum fields operate. Even the fleeting fluctuations of virtual particles occur within this gravitational backdrop. Every interaction, every flicker of energy is constrained by the geometry imposed by invisible mass. Gravity provides the scaffolding on which reality builds itself, shaping both the vast and the infinitesimal. Philosophically, this reinforces the invisibility of the universe's true structure. You feel a local effect, a downward pull, yet the same force governs interactions across incomprehensible distances. The weight of your body is the tip of an iceberg, a localized manifestation of a force that binds stars into galaxies, galaxies into clusters, and clusters into the cosmic web. What you perceive as tangible, stable, and solid is always dependent upon an invisible foundation, an unseen influence that shapes both existence and motion with relentless, silent authority. To inhabit a universe ruled by gravity is to live within a system of forces far beyond direct perception. The architecture of reality, from the smallest objects to the largest structures, emerges from interactions that are invisible and unmeasurable without inference. Gravity is the quiet regulator, a persistent, the omnipresent framework upon which the cosmos arranges itself. You exist in its grip, moving, interacting, and persisting, largely unaware of the silent force that defines every trajectory, stabilizes every structure, and governs the very rhythm of the universe itself. The thermodynamic shadow. Energy flows everywhere, unseen yet measurable. Heat radiates, work is done, and entropy increases in invisible currents. The processes that sustain life, build stars, and erode mountains operate largely out of sight, behind the veil of perception. You feel warmth from the sun, notice a fire burning, or sense the resistance of a moving object. Yet these are only local, partial glimpses of the vast energy dynamics that define reality. Most of what drives the universe, its currents, transformations, and balances, occurs without notice. Though in layers of interaction you cannot see, directly detect, or fully comprehend. Consider the movement of heat. Thermal energy diffuses constantly, flowing from hot regions to cold, obeying principles invisible to the naked eye. In your body, chemical reactions produce heat that dissipates into the surrounding air. In the oceans, solar energy warms water, generating currents that circulate globally. In stars, nuclear fusion releases prodigious energy, radiating across light years. These flows are continuous, pervasive, and largely imperceptible. You inhabit a universe in which energy is constantly exchanged, redistributed, and transformed, yet most of this movement unfolds beyond your direct awareness. Entropy, the measure of disorder, advances silently in every corner of existence. While you perceive some processes as orderly, plants growing, rivers flowing, machines operating, every system is subject to an inexorable increase in entropy. The heat generated by friction, the decay of structures, the dissipation of energy into the surroundings, all occur imperceptibly yet irreversibly. Reality is continually being reshaped by these hidden currents, and the apparent stability of your surroundings is only temporary, a localized reversal of the broader trend toward disorder. The thermodynamic shadow underlies everything, a background current that you cannot escape or control. Work is similarly pervasive yet unseen. Forces move matter, accelerate particles, and deform structures in ways that escape direct perception. Mountains rise and erode over millennia, glaciers shift silently, tectonic plates grind beneath the surface. The engines of life itself, metabolism, circulation, neural activity, rely on energy transfers that are invisible yet essential. Every action, from the simplest motion to the grandest cosmic process, is mediated by the transfer and transformation of energy. You experience the consequences, but rarely the mechanisms, interacting with a reality constantly shaped by invisible work. Even at the cosmic scale, energy flows shape structures imperceptibly. Light carries energy across billions of light years. Gravitational interactions redistribute potential energy, and dark matter channels unseen forces that govern galactic evolution. Stars radiate heat, photons diffuse, and cosmic filaments conduct energy through the fabric of the universe. You might look at the night sky and see only points of light, but these are the visible nodes of a vast network of energy exchange, occurring largely beyond perception, silently shaping the universe's evolution. Philosophically, this reinforces the hiddenness of reality. You assume stability, predictability, and independence in the objects and processes you observe. Yet nearly all activity occurs in domains beyond awareness. Heat diffuses, work proceeds, and entropy accumulates without fanfare. Your perception captures only snapshots of broader flows, fleeting evidence of continuous processes that maintain and reshape reality at every scale. To exist within the thermodynamic shadow is to live amid currents of energy and entropy that are invisible, pervasive, and unavoidable. Life, planetary systems, stars, and galaxies persist because of flows that you cannot perceive. The currents that silently do the work, sustaining order and enforcing change. The visible, tangible world is only a thin layer atop a vast, unseen river of energy, a shadowed domain where forces operate beyond senses, beyond instruments, yet underpin every phenomenon, every interaction, and every enduring structure in the universe. Invisibility as existence. To exist may not require visibility. The universe is filled with entities, forces, and phenomena that do not present themselves directly to your senses. Your confidence in what is real is undermined by the fact that most of it is hidden, yet omnipresent. The atoms in your body, the photons streaming from distant stars, the gravitational pull shaping planetary orbits. Most of the mechanisms underlying these phenomena are invisible. You interact with their consequences, yet the sources remain concealed. Reality is dominated not by what you perceive, but by what you cannot perceive, by layers of existence that operate independently of observation. Consider the matter that holds galaxies together. Dark matter outweighs all visible matter combined, forming vast halos and filaments across the cosmos. You cannot see it, touch it, or measure it directly, yet it governs motion, structure, and evolution at galactic and cosmic scales. Every star, every planetary system, every galaxy moves along paths defined by something fundamentally imperceptible. The visible is only a tiny fraction of existence. The invisible is the vast majority. Your intuitive sense of reality, the points of light, the objects around you, is a veneer atop a hidden infrastructure that is more influential than anything you can see. At smaller scales, invisibility is equally pervasive. Virtual particles flicker into and out of existence in the quantum vacuum, exerting forces and shaping the energy landscape, yet they leave no persistent form. Electric and magnetic fields extend through every region of space, guiding atoms and molecules, influencing chemical reactions, and maintaining the integrity of matter. Neutrinos pass through your body by the trillions every second, without interaction, without notice, silently conveying information about distant stars and cosmic events. Your body, your environment, and the entire planet exist in a network of influence, dominated by entities you cannot perceive. A constant hum of presence beneath the surface of awareness. Even time and space are more invisible than tangible. Space is structured, curved, and dynamic, yet you perceive it as empty and static. Time may be composed of discrete quanta, yet your consciousness experiences it as smooth and continuous. The substrate upon which reality unfolds, the geometry of space-time, the flow of energy, the network of forces, is largely inaccessible to direct perception. Existence does not require visibility. It only requires interaction, whether you are aware of it or not. What you call real is emergent from countless hidden processes that operate silently yet relentlessly. Philosophically, this demands a shift in perspective. You trust your senses, your measurements, your instruments, assuming that what is observable constitutes reality. In truth, existence is defined less by visibility than by influence. A galaxy exists in its gravitational halo. A quantum field exists in its fluctuating energy. The force exists in its interaction with matter, regardless of whether any observer perceives it. Presence does not require acknowledgement, and reality does not require recognition. The unseen constitutes the majority of existence, guiding, shaping, and sustaining the universe without ever revealing itself fully. To inhabit this universe is to dwell within a realm dominated by invisibility. Forces act, particles emerge and vanish, and structures form beyond perception. Every movement, every interaction, every moment of persistence is underpinned by entities and phenomena that you cannot see. The familiar, tangible world is a projection, a thin surface atop a vast, unseen domain. Reality is not contingent upon observation, it is sustained by the invisible. Existence and influence do not demand visibility, and the universe, immense, intricate, and hidden, is a constant reminder that the greater part of being unfolds in the shadows, imperceptible yet unavoidable, silent yet absolute, facing the invisible majority. You now begin to understand the full scale of what is hidden. Most of what exists is unseen, unexperienced, yet fundamental. The universe is less a collection of objects than a network of invisible processes. What does it mean to inhabit a world where the visible is only a fraction of reality? The atoms in your body are mostly empty space, bound by forces you cannot feel. Galaxies are strung along dark matter filaments you cannot perceive. Light travels in waves and particles, carrying energy and momentum you cannot directly sense. Neutrinos pass through you without interaction. Virtual particles flicker in and out of existence. And the quantum substratum of reality thrums with activity that never reaches your awareness. The majority of existence is hidden, yet it is decisive. This invisible majority governs everything you perceive as stable and real. Your senses, reliable as they may feel, filter reality into fragments that your mind can process. The air you breathe, the ground beneath your feet, the screen you read, each is the emergent result of countless interactions unfolding beyond perception. At every scale, from the microscopic to the cosmic, invisible processes dictate structure, motion, and persistence. Gravity organizes galaxies along unseen scaffolds. Quantum fluctuations shape atomic and molecular behavior. Energy and entropy flow in currents that neither your body nor your instruments can fully register. You live on a surface of existence, unaware of the foundations that support it. Even the passage of time and the continuity of matter are mediated by the unseen. At quantum scales, particles do not exist in fixed states until observed, and time itself may be granular, composed of discrete quanta beyond your perception. At cosmic scales, dark energy drives the expansion of space, stretching the distances between clusters of galaxies at speeds you cannot experience. The universe is a hierarchy of invisible influences, spanning scales from the almost unimaginably small to the almost unimaginably vast, all operating silently beneath or beyond your experience. What you see is a fleeting manifestation atop layers of imperceptible processes. Philosophically, confronting the invisible majority forces a reconsideration of existence. Reality is not what is visible or tangible. It is what interacts, persists, and organizes. To exist is not to be seen, but to influence, to participate in the unfolding of a network whose majority is imperceptible. The solidity of objects, the consistency of space, the regularity of physical law, all depend upon unseen entities, forces, and structures. You are immersed in a universe that is less a collection of things than a lattice of interactions, probabilities, and energies operating mostly beyond awareness. Your experience of stability is provisional, your perception of independence illusory. Every object, event, and interaction is a visible endpoint of invisible processes. Even consciousness itself arises from electrical and chemical interactions among neurons, orchestrated by forces and energies too small and subtle to detect directly. You inhabit a universe in which perception captures only a fraction of existence, and yet that fraction governs your understanding of reality. The invisible majority is not abstract. It is the active, organizing principle underlying everything you encounter. To face the invisible majority is to recognize that reality is not equivalent to observation. What you see is the tip of an immense structure of hidden activity, extending from the smallest quantum fluctuation to the largest cosmic filament. Your body, your thoughts, the world around you, all are temporary manifestations of processes that you cannot perceive, yet cannot escape. The visible is only a fraction, and the unseen is the foundation, the engine, and the ultimate arbiter of existence. In this realization, you confront the quiet, the pervasive truth. The universe is defined not by what you observe, but by what remains invisible, unexperienced, and infinitely consequential.